photographers. Thanks for taking the clickbait on the title, but this really is my detailed, honest, and non-sponsored hands-on review of the new Sony A7 IV. The good, the bad, mostly operationally. You'll see menu screens and samples, so you'll know exactly how the camera works, and I will tell you what's wrong with this camera. The A7 IV joins a crowded shelf of Sony full-frame models, making it complicated to pick the right one for your purpose. So according to Sony's A7 IV marketing, basic has never been this good. Well, maybe it's me, but judging by the price and the features, this is far from basic and much more than good. It's a 33 megapixel full-frame camera that shoots stills up to 10 frames per second and records 4K 60 frame internally at 10-bit with 422 color sampling using H.265. Those are substantial upgrades over the A7 III. And full disclosure, Sony has lent me this camera along with the 24-70 and the 70-200 G Master lenses. They didn't pay me, participate in the preparation, or review this video before posting. Let's get started by switching to the A7 IV. This is 4K 60 frame using the XAVCS HS format, also called H.265, or HEVC at 200 megabits, 10-bit 422. All Intra is available with higher data rates in H.264. And this section uses the new S-Cinetone gamma setting. I'll go through all of those settings when we get to video, but what you should have noticed is that I'm using continuous autofocus with face and eye detect on. That has never worked on me using a Sony camera unless I remove my glasses. That update alone is enough to make me quite giddy. And this is a long project, so I've divided it into two videos. In this one, mostly stills. In part 2, mostly video. Use the contents in the description below to navigate to the parts of interest to you. For those familiar with Sony cameras, the A7 IV seems pretty similar, but there's lots that's new, and much that I'd come to take for granted as Sony quirks have been fixed. That includes not only the menu design, but the recovery of the burst buffer, the inability to identify my eye, very limited touch functionality, the tiny micro HDMI port, menu output in 4K, and more. Well, let's start with some interesting new features. Eye autofocus, already good for humans and animals, now has a bird setting. Thanks, Gabriel. A couple of innovative focus features, a focus map, and breathing compensation. Let me demo those for you. Focus map is a manual focus assist for video. Areas out of focus behind are blue when you get your focus point. They're clear, turning orange when it's in front of the focus point. Now, although useful, it can be distracting, so you'll want to assign a function key to turn it on and off. Most lenses breathe when they're focusing. Watch the salt shaker on the left, the wine bottle on the right. They move when the focus is adjusted. It's an image quality setting, lens compensation, breathing, available only for video, eliminates or reduces the effect. Not all lenses are supported. Both of these are. All very good, meaning the A7 IV should be on anyone's list of cameras that deserve serious consideration for any and nearly all purposes. Creating images and video with this camera was a pleasure, so if you don't want to watch to the end, I will highly recommend this camera. As you should expect, the quality of the images is excellent. Many other manufacturers also use Sony sensors, which speaks to their quality. There are cameras with higher resolution, but there are very few limits to what you can do with 33 megapixels. Sony's color science is excellent across all of this camera's image settings, delivering crisp and detailed photos with a color purity and dynamic range that exceeds what this video and YouTube can reproduce. These images, along with their EXIF data, are available on FLICKR. Sony's look doesn't change much from model to model, a combination of black metal and plastic over a magnesium alloy frame. Sony promises increased solid and liquid resistance with improved sealing. With the newer, larger Z-series battery, separated for 520 shots in viewfinder mode, that is very good. The A7 IV tips the scale at 658 grams, typical in this category. The 24-70 lens adds 886 grams. Now, in my hands, it's comfortable and easy to manage with a two-handed grip with both lenses. More than enough clearance between lens and grip and between the lens mount and the bottom of the camera. It's the positioning of the grips on the 70-200 that provides the right balance. 2 card slots. Slot 1 supports CF Express Type A. Both support SD UHS 2. The 130mm viewfinder has the above-average 3.69 m-dots. The 750mm touchscreen, slightly over 1 m-dots, is below average resolution. It rotates up for overhead, down for waist level, and swivels forward for selfies. Display aspect is 3:2, the native stills mode. Touch has dramatically improved. All the menus are touch navigable. That includes the main menu, as well as the function menu and the shooting info screen. And that brings Sony into line with the competition. So, what's wrong with the body? I get that it's weather sealed, but the profusion of hard-to-open ports on the left side and the confusion of how they open and close should be addressed. The battery port has lots of clearance to the tripod mount, but why doesn't the battery door snap closed? Why is the menu key on the left? You have to reposition your hand to get to it. The back thumb grip is a little smaller than I'd like. Let's try the controls. Set the exposure mode on the dial, auto, PASM, and 3 custom slots. A push-to-change collar underneath selects video, stills, or the slow and quick motion video option. In manual, the front dial, which is just a short distance from the shutter release, sets the aperture. The back dial, my thumb falls right on it, sets shutter. In manual, with the mechanical shutter, shutter duration goes from bulb and 30 seconds to 1/8000. By default, press the right side of the command dial for ISO, which includes a very flexible auto capability. There are settings to prefer shorter shutter durations or lower ISOs. ISO sets from 50 to 204,800 in stills, in video, limited from 100 to 102,400. The 24-70 sets aperture from f2.8 to f22. The 70 to 200 has a marked aperture ring with an A for auto setting, also f2.8 to f22, but when it's not on auto, the lens overrides the front dial. The Fun menu has meter settings, more options than most, including the useful Highlight. The dynamic range control is in the main menu, off auto and 5 range settings. For this backlit scene, auto is contrasty and dark, and this is level 1. Level 5 lifts the shadows, reducing the contrast. If it's a setting that you frequently want to adjust, I'd recommend that you customize the Fun menu to include it. For the histogram, press DISP at the top of the control dial until it appears bottom right as you carousel through the display options. And if you're a fan of Zebra Exposure Assist, the A7 IV has one of the most flexible implementations and works in stills as well as video modes. Before we start snapping, the A7 IV has 4 aspect ratios, can save either JPEG or HEF, the more flexible high-efficiency image format. But although it's also used by Apple, it's not yet widely supported. It does save 10-bit 422 files, probably best used with the HLG setting in the picture profiles for the best dynamic range and color results, along with compatibility for screens that don't support HDR. I'll start planning a JPEG or HEF video to get into those details, but today I've used mostly JPEG for the sample images. I like this quality selection screen. Not sure why the JPEG hef switch wasn't included here. Set RAW and/or image file, then RAW options, including lossless compressed, select JPEG or hef quality, and size. What's wrong here is that because aspect and size aren't together, there's no screen that shows you the actual resolution. Down to display media info to see how many images or how much video you'll be able to store, although, of course, that appears on the shooting screen as well. Then, I love where they've put format and the media settings, including a link to jump back and forth between this screen and quality. Nice. But I wish that those kind of deep links between complementary settings were more widely implemented through the menu. And there are settings for dual or simultaneous recording for backups, and auto switch or sequential to extend recording time across two cards. Although with sequential, you'll get a warning if one of the installed cards isn't up to your video record speed, even if the other is. And you're ready to go. The default focus, autofocus auto, and wide area works nicely for most snapshot work. The fun menu has more options if you have specific needs. In addition to auto single, continuous, and manual, auto, which switches from single to continuous if movement is detected, and dynamic manual to override once auto has done its work. The key on the lens has custom options for eye autofocus, AF on, or tracking. Super convenient. AF with shutter can be disabled for back or lens button focus. Focus coverage is quite remarkable, able to pick out small details like the twisted branch here. And although focus on most cameras sees through the fence, A7 IV picks it up. And fast. This is from infinity to its closest focus distance at 38 centimeters. Eye autofocus is not new, but I continue to be astounded by how easily and quickly the A7 IV picks up eyes. This is a mature and robust feature. I'll get to tracking with burst and video focus in part 2. The exposure color tab has a fairly standard set of white balance presets, Kelvin from 2500 to 9900 in 100-unit increments, and an amber blue green magenta shift. 3 custom slots. Custom capture mode has a small movable capture point, and I like that the camera reports on the color temperature and shift that it has applied. What's wrong here is that you can't capture a custom white balance while using a memory recall position. White balance priority can favor the ambience of lower temperature incandescence for a more realistic warm look, or favor white to remove any color cast. In stills mode, a lock can keep the same white balance for a burst or while you're composing with a half press. In movie mode, shockless smooths the transition from one white balance setting to another when conditions change. Creative looks have been revised. Terms like autumn leaves and sunset have been decluttered. And names have been shortened, so you can't tell the players without a program. You choose from Standard, Portrait, Neutral, Vivid 1 and 2, and then going by the help text, FL seems similar to the earlier Deep, IN could be the new Clear, SH is probably like the light setting on earlier models. Then Mono and Sepia. Of course, you can customize these presets using the contrast, highlight, shadow, fade, saturation, sharpness, and clarity sliders. Fujifilm photographers combine these settings to make recipes. No reason you can't do that here. We'll get to saving custom settings in a minute. But in case you don't get fade, there's no explanation in the manual, here is the 0 setting, and here at the maximum. You'll want to spend some time experimenting. Picture profiles, where you'll find video-oriented settings like S-Log and HLG, can also be used for stills. And the range of settings available, particularly when you go beyond the presets, isn't duplicated by any other manufacturer. Leave lots of experimentation time to master these. There are no selectable scene modes, however. In the Intelligent Auto mode, the camera does select several scene types, including portraits, landscapes, macro, and low light. And there are no filters. Sony called them picture effects on the A7 IV either. Honestly, I don't miss them. Panorama, also missing. Probably not going on the what's wrong list either. Now, once you have the camera configured, you'll want to save your setup as custom settings to be recalled from the mode dial, where there are 3 slots for stills, 3 more for video, and 3 for S&Q. From the menu, 4 more can be retrieved from a memory card. Considering the number of features available, this really simplifies switching from stills to burst or from H.265 long op to H.264 all intra and using S-Log profiles. The G-Master lenses are great partners for this camera and this sensor. The optically stabilized 24-70 provides coverage from an 84 to 34 degree angle of view. Filter diameter is 82 millimeters, marked zoom ring with a lock. Now it extends from 13 to 16 centimeters, fully zoomed in, unmarked focus ring, auto manual switch, although probably best set in the menu, and 1 custom function key. It defaults to focus hold. But when this is set to face detect or eye autofocus, your world will change and you'll find it hard to use another camera lens combo that doesn't do this. Sharp detail right to the edges without color fringing and a lovely bokeh. Closest focus distance when wide is 38 centimeters, also when zoomed to 70. At the closest focus distance and the widest aperture, the depth of field is wonderfully shallow. The optically stabilized premium G-Master FE70-200 f2.8, which takes the field of view from 34 to 12 degrees, opened up a world of interesting images for me. Yes, pricey, but still excellent value. It tips the scale slightly over a kilo. It has its own removable tripod mount to take pressure from the lens mount. The hood has a port to adjust polarizing or variable ND filters, and the mount is adjustable, with markings for landscape and portrait orientations. All of the action, zoom, and focus is internal. Nice. 77mm filter diameter, unmarked focus ring, and an auto manual switch, and a switch that limits focus from 3 meters to infinity. The DMF switch enables manual focus override, even with continuous auto. That's most useful when autofocus misidentifies and you need a quick correction. Closest focused is 40 centimeters wide, 82 centimeters zoomed in, and there are 3 custom focus hold buttons. Regardless of whether you've rotated the lens on the tripod mount or handheld, there's one exactly where you need it. Marked zoom ring and a mark aperture ring, with a selection for detented clicked operation or seamless transition, as well as an iris lock. Optical stabilization switch with 3 settings. Mode 2 enables smoother pans. Mode 3 supports a larger range of unpredictable movement. What's wrong with these lenses? Nothing quality-wise, but on the camera side, I'd love a linear focus option as well as a focus bracket. And in the world of mirrorless, E-mount certainly has a larger selection and variety of lenses from Sony and from third parties than the competition. That's true at all levels of quality and price. However, now maybe it's time for Sony to upgrade or replace their 28-135 cinema lens. And that's it for part 1. Part 2 continues with video and continuous burst shooting.